Picture this. You see red and blue lights in your mirror. You pull over. The officer walks up and says, "Do you know why I stopped you today?" Most drivers think the next few minutes are about a traffic violation. They're not. The officer hasn't decided whether this stays a simple stop, turns into a lengthy investigation, or becomes something much worse. And that decision can happen in the next few seconds. Not because of what the officer says, because of what you say. As we move through 2026, more departments are using body cameras, license plate readers, automated reporting systems, and roadside technology that captures every detail of an encounter. But despite all that technology, the biggest mistake drivers make is still the same. They rely on you not knowing your rights. This channel makes sure you do. Subscribe and stay informed. And if you believe more people need to see this, share it and let me know your thoughts in the comments. They voluntarily give away information. Today, we're breaking down the 4 traffic stop rights drivers are effectively losing in 2026 and the single decision point that causes it. More importantly, you'll learn exactly what to say when that moment arrives. Because once you recognize the decision point, you'll never look at a traffic stop the same way again. Most people think rights disappear because an officer takes them away. That's usually not what happens. Drivers give them away. Watch how quickly it happens. "Officer, where are you headed tonight?" Driver, "Just leaving a friend's place."
Officer, oh yeah, which friend?
Driver, "Actually, we were watching the game downtown." Officer, "Did you have anything to drink?" Just like that, the stop changed. Not because the officer accused anyone of anything, because the driver volunteered information. Here's another example. "Officer, how fast do you think you were going?" Driver, "Probably a little over." Officer, "How much over?" Now the officer has an admission. Again, the stop expanded because the driver supplied information. This is the trap. Most people think they're being polite. Most people think they're helping. Most people think answering questions makes the stop end faster. Instead, every answer creates another avenue of investigation. Let's be fair. Officers ask questions for legitimate reasons. Traffic stops are unpredictable. An officer doesn't know whether they're dealing with a routine violation, an impaired driver, someone with outstanding warrants, or a person connected to another investigation. Questions help gather information. Questions help establish facts. Questions help evaluate situations. That's why you'll often hear things like, "Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? How long have you owned this vehicle? Any reason you're nervous?" These questions aren't random. They're designed to collect information. The problem isn't that officers ask. The problem is that drivers often misunderstand their role in the conversation. They assume every question requires an answer. And that's where things begin to change. This is the most important part of the entire video. The decision point happens the moment an officer shifts from identification to investigation. That's it. That's the exact moment. Here's the wrong response. "Officer, where are you coming from tonight?" Driver, "I was at a bar but only had 2 beers." Notice what happened. The officer never asked about alcohol. The driver introduced alcohol. Now the officer has new information. New questions begin. The encounter grows. Now let's look at the alternative. "Officer, where are you coming from tonight?" Driver, "I prefer not to answer questions." That's it. No argument. No attitude. No confrontation. No unnecessary details. The officer may continue the stop. The officer may issue a citation. But the driver did not provide additional investigative material. That is the decision point. Everything changes based on that one choice. Right number 1, the practical right to remain silent. Many people know it exists. Very few actually use it. The moment questioning begins, they start talking. Right number 2, control over your personal information. Travel plans, activities, friends, locations, schedules. People often surrender all of it voluntarily. Right number 3, control over the scope of the encounter. The more information you provide, the larger the conversation becomes. A simple stop can quickly become a broader investigation. Right number 4, the ability to avoid creating evidence against yourself. Many cases begin with admissions, not discoveries. Admissions. People talk themselves into problems every single day. Memorize this sentence. "I prefer not to answer questions." That's it. 9 words. Simple. Professional. Easy to remember. Let's repeat it. "I prefer not to answer questions." Again, "I prefer not to answer questions." You don't need a speech. You don't need to debate the law. You don't need to argue constitutional rights on the roadside. Just remember that one sentence. Now let's talk about what usually happens next. "Officer, why don't you want to answer?" Response, "I prefer not to answer questions." "Officer, you don't have anything to hide, do you?" Response, "I prefer not to answer questions." "Officer, it'll go faster if you cooperate." Response, I prefer not to answer questions. Notice the pattern. No argument, no hostility, no escalation, just consistency. Most drivers fail because they hold their position for a few seconds and then start talking. Consistency is what matters. The principle is simple. In the United States, people generally cannot be compelled to provide answers that could incriminate them. Traffic laws may require identification and certain documents. But investigative questioning is a different matter. The biggest mistake drivers make is confusing required information with voluntary information. Once you understand that difference, the decision point becomes much easier to recognize. Let's review. The trap isn't the officer's question. The trap is volunteering information. The decision point occurs when the interaction shifts from identification to investigation. The exact phrase is, I prefer not to answer questions. Remember it. Use it calmly. Use it professionally. Use it consistently. Because the rights most drivers think they're losing in 2026 are often the rights they're surrendering themselves. And once information leaves your mouth, you can't take it back. The smartest drivers aren't the ones who talk the most. They're the ones who recognize the decision point before the officer does.